place has. So we'll start with this open words for community by Starhawk. We are all longing to go home to some place we have never been, a place half remembered and half envisioned. We can only catch glimpses of from time to time. Community. Somewhere there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere a circle of hands will open to receive us. Eyes will light up as we enter. Voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. Community means strength. Strength that joins our strength to do the work that needs to be done. Arms to hold us when we falter. A circle of healing. A circle of friends. Someplace where we can be free. So we are thankful for this place where we gather on a Sunday morning, where we connect to whatever is meaningful in our lives, to that which is holy. We understand for this place to be here always, it requires our time, our talents, and our economic support. In the passing of our felt chalice, we are moved to put in whenever we can into it to sustain all that we treasure here. Everybody got a song to sing. Everybody's got a song to sing. It might fall flat, it might just rain. Everybody got a song to sing. Everybody got a soul to soar. Everybody got a soul to soar. We might be rich, we might be poor. Everybody got a soul to soar. Everybody got a lie to hide. Everybody got a lie to hide. We might not say before we die. Everybody got a lie to hide. Everybody got an urge to fly. Everybody got an urge to fly. It might be low, it might be high. Everybody got an urge to fly. Everybody got a song to sing. Everybody got a song to sing. It might fall flat, it might just ring. Everybody got a song to sing. Everybody got a song to sing. And now, what you've all been waiting for, Lisa Glover is going to speak about placemaking.
Would you put the lights on? Please, since you're up there. Yeah. Whoa.
Let's turn them off.
Then there was light. Thank you.
All right, good. Are we good there? Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for having me here. I'm really excited to talk to you all about placemaking. Thank you so much, Lori, for your incredible introduction on what placemaking is and why it matters. I'm going to go over some of that stuff again, just because there's a lot there, and I'm hoping by the end of this to to turn each of you into placemakers in your own neighborhood. Because although I have a background in architecture and art, and I've done a lot of work with nonprofits, and I've been able to work professionally in placemaking in rural towns, I firmly believe that placemaking is something that anyone who is willing to listen to members of their community and willing to do the hard work of trying to find consensus, I believe that anyone who's willing to do those things is able to do placemaking. So to go over a little bit about, Lori mentioned a lot of these highlights, but what is placemaking? So I see it as a development strategy, a design strategy, and a development strategy for public and public-facing spaces. So you could do placemaking in a park, you could do placemaking in a cafe, you could do placemaking in a shared space like this one. You can even do it in your front yard or on your sidewalk. It's people-powered public space design. It's all about involving those who most are local to a space or most use a given space in the conversations about what could be different about that place, what could make it better for everybody who's there. And often it's a very entrepreneurial, iterative process. It's about, well, let's not just dream of it and put a bunch of money into it and then hope that what we thought might work will work. Often there's a development strategy within placemaking called lighter, quicker, cheaper, which is all about what is the lightest, quickest, cheapest way to be able to try out your idea, to see if it might work, if you're on the right path with your idea that you're hoping will bring more people together or make the space function better. I'm going to show a whole bunch of examples of what this can look like. But before and actually I already mentioned this part, who can do placemaking? Anyone can do placemaking, I believe. But I do want to caution that there are ways that anybody can do placemaking, but you can't just call anything that you do in public space placemaking. So what isn't placemaking? Placemaking isn't top-down solutions. It's not a bunch of people who are in positions of privilege thinking about what should happen in someone else's neighborhood and putting it there and going, "You're welcome. You should enjoy this. Of course you would want this, right?" That's not placemaking. It's not just about redesigning a public space. It's not just about making things pretty, but placemaking often does make things pretty. It's not just about attracting tourists, though often if you design places for locals, it's going to be places that tourists are also drawn to. I like to use a movie from last year, a character from a movie from last year as an example of this, who often sang, "I want to be where the people are." The Little Mermaid wanted to, it was a tourist to the land, and so she saw what other people were doing there, and that attracted her to be there. So that's why it can be helpful to not just think about tourists when you're designing spaces. And also, it's really important to not assume that you know better than the locals. And again, as someone trained in architecture, every single time I invite people I don't know, people whose opinions might be different from mine, people who aren't trained in design or architecture or public spaces, into the conversation, I am always surprised and amazed by what they have to offer and what they share about the spaces, the insights that I could never have, just because they've been there, they care about that space, they know it well. And so example of what isn't placemaking is when someone uses the term placemaking and says, this is placemaking at its best for a actually really lovely public project, but one that involved some of those folks saying, oh, the neighbors to this place don't know what's good for them. That's, this particular park project turned out amazing. It's beautiful. I love going there. But if you're not involving the people most local to a place in those conversations, and hopefully even having them involved in the implementation, it's simply not placemaking. It can still be a really great design, but it's not placemaking. So while I want everyone to feel empowered to be a placemaker, I just want to make sure that you're using it in ways that aren't going to make me cry. So, yeah, we just said that. And so placemaking instead often looks like people in leadership and people who, people who aren't in positions of leadership, shoulder to shoulder, thinking about and dreaming about what a space can be. So this was from a mural workshop, and we actually involved some of the students who had gotten in trouble for doing graffiti in this area where we ended up putting a mural. Who involves people who do vandalism in community projects? You do that if you want good spaces, because those are the people who are going to be there at maybe times that other people aren't going to be there. These are kids who are doing graffiti in a tunnel are probably going to be there at like 11 p.m. at night, and they might have something to say to people who want to do harm to that mural. So that's why it's so important to involve all different people in projects. So you might be wondering, what can placemaking look like? Because I've been talking about it a lot, but not really providing too many examples. So I'm just going to run through a bunch of these. And if you or if the audience online wants me to dwell on one, I'm happy to talk a little bit more on that. But yeah, we'll just run through a bunch. So it can look like sharing or caring for shared spaces by cleaning them up. Can look like testing out helpful signage. These two doors are inside of a door marked women's bathroom. One leads to a utility closet, the other leads to the actual women's bathroom. And prior to me grabbing a small piece of paper and putting it on the doors, I had walked into the utility closet like 3 separate times. So it makes people, when people know how to navigate a space, it makes them feel more welcome. You can also take signage to the next level. I was very fortunate to get to work on a number of projects with folks in Selma, Alabama. And so they got a chance to, they've been talking about wayfinding signage in their town for 30 years. And this was one of the biggest leaps forward, for about $700 adding signage that the community made to downtown in very light, quick, cheap ways. It's also about connecting places. So here's a path that has been worn into the dirt between a shopping center and a local neighborhood. It's also about increasing accessibility. This is a local grandmother and a cyclist got together to add a little bit of a ramp. Clearly not wheelchair accessible, but a little bit better than what was there before, to make it a little easier for her to get her grandkids up and over this big ledge. It can look like reimagining safer streets. This is a bunch of parents with kids getting together to look at this exit to a shopping lot where a 4-year-old on a bike was hit about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, and so they chalked it up and talked about what could be changed to the design of this space to make it so that way no other kid is going to get hit by a car coming around this blind corner. And sometimes those things can become a reality. This is a mid-block crosswalk that got painted, and temporary bollards were added to make it a much safer, noticeable space for cars up in Rutland, Vermont, that I worked on with folks. And then more locally, here in Honesdale, a bunch of us as neighbors in downtown got together with store owners and projected a family movie on a building. So you don't necessarily need to have a whole bunch of funding. Here it's clear there's no screen. It's projected on a salmon-colored building, but looked fine. And it brought a whole bunch of people together on a nice October evening. Can look like painting a mural. So that's that mural that I talked about. I'll mention that a couple other times to draw out some different points about that. It's brought a whole bunch of people together. It could be adding reasons to stop by. So adding a little free library to a vacant or underutilized piece of public land gives people, especially kids, a reason to want to be there, to stop by every day and see what has changed, what new books have come in. It can also look like sharing a meal outside. This is an underutilized space up in Rutland, Vermont. And we brought together a whole bunch of people over these pizza wars where they basically would have head-to-head battles of everyone in Rutland is very fierce about their favorite pizza choices. So we brought people together over that in an underutilized space that people like, oh, that's only people who are homeless hang out in this park. So we brought everybody, whether they had housing or not, into this space to be able to weigh in on which of these two pizza places had the best pizza. And we did that a few different times to get people into the habit of sharing the space together, sharing food together, and also talking about things that they care about, even if it's something kind of not too consequential like your favorite pizza place. It can also look like inviting others in. There's this really cool coffee shop in Selma, Alabama that's right next to the famous bridge. And it's the second coffee shop that this lovely woman, Jackie, was putting together. But given its location, it was always going to get tourist traffic. But she wanted to make sure that local people who were going to be there for her, when the tourist season was over, also felt comfortable in this space that was, otherwise going to be very busy during certain times of the year, to make sure that she wanted to make sure that they felt comfortable there and that they could see themselves hanging out there. So she brought them in while it was under construction, and I have great pictures of muffins and coffee next to insulation piles, and I'm not sure if that was necessarily, yeah, I don't. Yeah, code violation. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. But you know what? It brought people together, and they got to think about, and it's now absolutely gorgeous space, and it's really exciting to see that even public facing spaces, not necessarily public spaces, it's great to see that they can also involve community, and which is frankly good for their bottom line. So why do placemaking? What is the significance of doing this kind of work? Well, it can draw positive attention to neglected spaces. This is another privately owned lot up in Rutland and has been vacant for 20 years, growing weeds all over it. And community members there put these armatures on top of these jersey barriers or other barriers, some type of barrier, to make a pop-up art gallery in this empty lot that has been an eyesore in the middle of town for 20 years. So suddenly it's got people talking about this space and hanging out there for good reasons. It can also jumpstart long-standing projects. This is a park in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, which has one of the highest crime rates per capita in the country. And even though downtown is very safe, no one hangs out there because they feel it's unsafe. And thus, certain parts of downtown get neglected. So being able to all we did to this space, this old park space, is power wash it, and it suddenly has made it look like a much friendlier place that people will want to be. And this is also the same place where we put where the library director installed the little free library, which he now wants to cover the town in because he has a lot of backlog in his library to get out there to the community. It can also solve long-standing issues. So this is some of the graffiti that would pop up every single time the tunnel where that mural now stands would come up. County would paint it immediately. You'd get the nastiest graffiti you've ever seen in this area. So by involving the people who did some of the art and graffiti there in the past, we have not had a single nasty piece of graffiti in the past 2.5 years now. The mural has been up because we involved those who were responsible for some of this nonsense. That's the power of this kind of involving everybody, even the people you might not think that you can find some agreement with or find something to work on with them. It can also save money. 3 different ways that placemaking can save money. One, volunteers doing the work, because often people will put, even people who are really strapped for time will be able to find some time or some money to be able to put into a project that is happening in their neighborhood or near them because they care about it, because they see it every day. So here, a bunch of kids were helping with adding some bike lanes to Selma, Alabama, where 19% of the population doesn't have access to a vehicle. Oops, one. Second way is it also saves money. Often we might make, there are examples that I could point to of times when, well-meaning, really smart people in positions of privilege and leadership have said, oh, we need this piece of infrastructure because the community wants it. But then don't ask the particular community members that piece of infrastructure would most affect, what exactly they need. And then it turns out that the piece of infrastructure they got doesn't quite meet their people's needs. And you might need like an extra 10% to be able to change that piece of infrastructure to make it meet their needs. So we could be talking about objects that are like $100,000 or more. And in rural budgets, 10%, an extra $10,000 might be really hard to find after you're supposed to have completed a project. And the third way is that by getting people together to try out changes, it demonstrates community interest to grant funders. And grant funders, they're often looking at a wide variety of projects. So if you can set your project apart by showing that people already care about it and are putting their own effort in to make those changes, then you're going to be a lot more likely to get that grant funding over someone who hasn't demonstrated that their community is excited about it. So yeah, great way to save money by involving more people in the process. It also, placemaking connects us to place. So I mentioned that 19% of people in Selma don't have access to a car. By adding the first bike lanes to Selma's streets, suddenly people who might feel a little less comfortable going, say, to downtown because there weren't necessarily safe ways of getting there, they suddenly have they have greater access to a place that they didn't necessarily feel comfortable going to. And often when we connect in to place more, it also helps us connect in more to our neighbors. So during the mural project, I heard so many parents who were like, oh, wait, as their kids are working on the mural, like, oh, wait, you're that person's parent. Like, I've been hearing about your kid for like 2 years, and this is the first time we've gotten to meet up. And then some of the other volunteers for the mural project, it was really sweet. We had some of the younger people in this picture weren't necessarily those closest to the project, but they got to know some neighbors from just a couple blocks away who are the older people in this picture. And they became enamored by them and their little dog, and hearing about their little garden. And for some of these people in this pictures, the younger people are queer folks, and they didn't necessarily know older queer folks in their community. So this suddenly became something that they were just like #life goals about. It was just adorable to see them connect with people in their community that they hadn't gotten a chance to see, and see like you can, even in a rural place where there's increasing strife around being something different than the seeming status quo. It gave them like an example of what it means to be here. And it fosters community. It brings lots of different people together, and it empowers people. This is Cassie. She was one of our really incredible longtime volunteers for the mural project. Really creative person, but generally pretty quiet, snarky but quiet. And by the end of the mural project, first of all, this is her giving a speech on top of the mural tunnel to everyone who gathered to celebrate it. And She also, I think in that speech, mentioned that she planned on, I think, fighting the Honesdale mayor for his job. So she went from not wanting to really see, or not seeing a future for herself in her rural town, to wanting to be a leader in it. And she proved that she wasn't just saying that by the next year, running for her student council and getting onto student council. So that's really what I love most about placemaking is that it connects people to the places that, and it connects people to places, it connects people to each other. It helps them to feel empowered, uh, and like a part of their community. And it makes those, and that also then has the byproduct of making those places better for everyone. Because you don't necessarily need to be involved in the placemaking process yourself to then benefit from somebody else helping to make that space even better. Because, like, none of you necessarily were involved in the mural project, but anyone who's taking their kid or grandkid to the park isn't going to have to walk by nasty graffiti now. So how can you practice placemaking in places that you care about? Because I mentioned it's something that you could do it here in a local park or in your own neighborhood or in your front yard even. Um, it's important to understand first what makes places good. There's a really incredible resource called Project for Public Spaces. And they created this great little chart. So this is a quick way to think about what makes a good space. It needs to be able to foster places that diverse people can talk about things. If ever you might have a lot of people in a space, but if everyone's off by themselves, if there isn't room for multiple people to gather, then it's probably not going to be a very good space. There should be ideally a variety of uses and activities. We like to try to look for like 10 different ways that a space can be used. And I feel like I don't know the full history of this room, but I imagine it's a space that can change throughout the week since you're only here, I guess, once a week. So being able to be a space that's flexible and has multiple uses makes a space better. Access and linkages, it's really important for people in cars, in buses, and on their feet, and bikes and wheelchairs. Whatever way they have to get around, it's important for them to be able to get to that place. If a place could be the coolest place ever, but if the audience that's meant to be there, or if the local people can't meaningfully get there, then it's not going to be an effective place. And then comfort and image. If while I am not a huge, even as a designer, I like to downplay aesthetics because I think that even like plywood furniture can be beautiful. And I think that low budget things can be really beautiful if done in a thoughtful way. But a lot of people do want to spend time in places that look nice and feel comfortable for them. So that might look like making sure that there are trees and there are plants that are flowering during different times of the year. So that way people have reasons to stop there and see something new, or sit in the shade, or be able to stay out of the rain if it's drizzling a little bit. So those kinds of things make a space more comfortable and make people be able to hang out there. You want to observe the space in question, and you can ask yourself a number of different questions like what's special about it, what actually happens there, how do people interact with you there, because again, talking to the people who are there is a really important part of doing placemaking. And asking them what do they want to see there, or what don't they want to see there. And taking note of what kinds of needs and wants appear as you're having these conversations is really important. Listening to the people, listening to what you're seeing in the landscape can be very helpful. Then you want to talk to these ideas with others. Ask them what ideas they have and try to understand who manages the space, so that way you know what you can do without permission and what you might need permission for, and who would be granting that before you start putting down permanent paint in a crosswalk. You could probably do chalk you could probably put it down chalk in a crosswalk, but paint might need to ask someone, local transportation department, local council to be able to do things like that. And also you want to ask other people who else should be involved. Who are you forgetting about? Because it's easy. We're all in bubbles to a certain degree. So making sure that you're not forgetting people, even those who might, again, disagree with you or might feel a little bit differently about a project, it's really important to at least make space to listen to them. You're not going to consider everybody's idea necessarily or give every idea equal weight, but hearing people, making space for them to feel heard, makes a big difference in those people feeling like they have a say in what happens around them. And they're more like, they might not agree with something, but they might be willing to like at least make sure that if someone's starting a fire in it, that they're gonna call the fire department. You want people to feel some stake of ownership, even if you don't agree on every single thing. And then again, you want to test the idea as much as possible in that lighter, quicker, cheaper fashion. What's the simplest way you could imagine and make a change happen today to a space? Even if it's just maybe you want a pavilion somewhere or a nice bench, you could grab a couple chairs that are meant for outdoors, not like this, and put them there and see if people sit there. And if they don't, then maybe it's not shaded and it's too hot there, or maybe it's just not a comfortable place to sit. Maybe you need to move a seating area to somewhere else for people to actually use it and start having conversations with each other. So you observe how that functions, and then you consider taking it to the next level. You can look for grant funding. You can talk to local people in positions of power to see if they have some money in a budget to be able to make more permanent changes. And that's the basics of how you do placemaking and why it's so important because it brings people together and it makes our public spaces better. And the more we can share spaces together, especially with people that we don't know, the more resilient our neighborhoods can be. And social capital has been shown to be the highest predictor of how fast places recover from challenges. And we live in an increasingly challenging world. So if we want to be able to get through them, we're going to have to get through them together. So thank you all for your time today.
Well, thank you, Lisa.
So if anyone has any thoughts, here are just some last couple pictures I included from Rutland, a benches taking over parking spaces, someone having painted a fish on a piece of stone that's meant to just block cars from going through a certain area, or people playing music in a space. These are all very relatively simple, not too difficult ways to be able to reimagine a space for more people and with more local, in a way that feels more local and more welcoming to more people. Yes.
This reminded me of a number of things. One was back in the mid-1970 when an unoccupied vacant lot outside of San Francisco was declared People's Park, and a number of people had tried to set up their own, a park for the community. But the thing is, nobody bothered to get any zoning permits, and the city eventually evacuated and cleared the place out until it was a vacant lot once more. So the whole thing is organization.
Mm-hmm.
And like I keep reminding me of two situations. One was outside of Copenhagen, Denmark, place called Christiania.
I've been there. Yep.
You've been there. Oh, yeah. Now you know. You just back in the 1970s, it was an abandoned military base, and the local hippies just moved in, cleaned everything out, and the attitude was that everybody just let them be, because it was all nice, neat, and organized. And the only official recognition that the city of Copenhagen gave to Christiani was the fact that they established a bus stop in front of the gates. But another one, which ended up in complete and total disaster, was the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone out in Seattle. That was a number of years ago when a group of people, people just tried to form something similar, but it was so badly organized that it just completely fell apart after only a few weeks. So the whole thing is organization, paperwork, and things like that. You know, it's not an easy task, but once everything gets done, it's so beneficial.
Yeah, and that's why so much of placemaking does require testing things out and understanding who the local officials are and what, there are certain things that you can get away with.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that you really need to, at the very least, make sure that public officials are aware of and okay with something. If, hopefully they're on board with changes. But there are some cases where, like with Christiania, like people will and can be organized enough themselves that they can make it say, like, we're taking this, actually be able to do a really good job of that. But yeah, I love the example too of where places where that doesn't work. But regardless, being able to build up that capacity using small wins and organizing people in these small ways can really help to make it easier to build momentum and keep things organized as and if it grows.
Thank you.
Hey, Tom, can you bring up the other people in the Zoom?
Yeah,
Turn the slides up.
yeah, I'll do that.
I think I just got off.
No, you're good.
Okay. Is anybody going to talk? Because if not, I will.
I'd like to say something.
Okay.
I just wanted to say I was thinking of Christo. His wife's name escapes me, and the orange flags in Central Park in Manhattan. There was a lot of controversy, but it was beautiful, and that was the Buddhistic orange of peace. And then I was thinking also in Manhattan, although it's happened elsewhere, where people who, were known by their graffiti tags actually became accepted graffiti artists and were showing their work in galleries in New York.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can have really cool. I don't know the. I've seen the pictures of the orange flags. I know what that looks like, but I don't remember the origins of how that project got started. But even public art projects, even if that wasn't one that involved placemaking strategies, involved with most local people in the development of that, those kinds of projects can still be amazing and impactful. I certainly don't want to. I'm certainly not implying that that's the only way to do public space. But it can be effective, and even in cases like you mentioned, though, where people don't necessarily like it, or some people don't necessarily like the outcome at first.
That's great. So is it my turn yet?
Yes, it's your turn, Sharon.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. That was very inspiring. I live in a small town called Easton, Pennsylvania, and I've become quite involved with a lot of organizations here. We have a very large artist community here, and they're very active in trying to do things, especially a couple of people who wanted to do outside art, like Valentine's Day. They went to every single school and older facility and all things, and they made everybody make hearts, and then they came around to all the businesses and all people who were willing to put all the hearts in the windows, so they would say that everyone loves Easton. So it you really felt great because we knew everybody was a part of this project, and it was great. So anyway, I had bought many years ago at this time, and I'm almost done, a building that I have in mind to use for a space. And you inspired me because directly on the side of my building, there was a small park. And I thought, because we have a very large Hispanic population, I was seeing kind of like on my part of the property, putting up chairs and things like that, and having maybe mariachi bands or any kind of band actually go into the park and play. And then maybe some of the local businesses or even housewives who are excellent cooks have some taco stands, because when I lived in Brooklyn, these stands would show up when they would come to play soccer on our fields in Red Hook, because we had lots of playing fields, and it was very wonderful, and it made all the people want to come because they wanted to see the soccer and they wanted to eat the food. So it was very inspiring, because I'm really looking for ways to use it. And the one thing that I remembered when I did live in Brooklyn, that a very easy way was to put up permanent chess tables and benches, and all along Ocean Parkway you would see old people, young people just come, because it was always there and always available and didn't cost any money to play chess. So it seems to me that there's a million ways for me to expand my ideas of this little space that I have, other than that I have other connections now, unfortunately, in town, to make other wonderful things happen, because this is such an exciting idea that I've more or less always been a part of, but now I'm getting ready to, open my building for the community. So I'm very excited about all these things you discussed. I have it all written down. I have 3 pages worth of ideas. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and I love Easton. As someone who went to school at Lehigh University, I would bike over to Easton on the towpath all the time.
Yeah.
And I just have to mention the artist my professor of mine, Beresford Booth, lives in Easton, and he's the one who always showed us pictures of the orange flags. It's like a way to say, like, hey, something significant, pay attention to this. So I just wanted to mention the connection there between you and what, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I'm blanking on, was it Sheila, was it you had mentioned the orange flags? I just
Yes,
love
yes,
the
yes, yes,
connection
yes,
between
yes.
the two things there. So and I love the idea. I'm really excited I hope to get to hear about how you end up inviting the community in, and I hope that they can be involved in planning something in that little park space, because that's such a wonderful idea. Way to bring your community into that space. I love it.
What do the orange
Thank you
flags
so much.
represent?
That's a good question.
Well, I think that like that specific one in New York it was just an art installation by Cristo. And I was there, I remember, and I just started getting all these thoughts because it was actually Gates. I think it was called the Gates or something like that.
Yes, it was called the Gate. That's what
Yeah,
it was called.
structures with orange fabric draping down. Cristo did all of these fabric related installations, like they would wrap entire buildings in fabric. But I remember because I actually got to go to this one. I mean, this was like 2008, 2000. Back then, I can't remember exactly how long ago it was, but I was remembering that, and I said, "Wow!" I remember going to that, and it was, yeah. Some people like complained or like didn't like it, but it was really kind of a very you could walk through the gates, and there was lots of them. I can't remember how big it was, but then I thought, okay, if someone did something like that now, it would just become like an Instagrammable, like social media thing where you just take a picture and you're not really thinking about it. What does it mean? And like that made me start thinking about like public art or like public spaces nowadays. A lot of places will have like a mural wall where it's just like a selfie wall or something like that, and it feels like a very superficial engagement in a place. Do you have any ideas about that? Because like it's so interesting, because back then, I mean, yeah, that was a while ago, at least 2000, because I think I was still in college, but Instagram didn't exist then, and people took photos of it, obviously, but it wasn't like an attraction to like get views or likes or something online. So it feels like so much. I mean, that's why I'm so interested in the placemaking, because it's like in the physical world and not just existing something cool that you can take a selfie in front of and put it online. Like, I don't know if you think about that all in your work. It's kind of a tension that I have between those two things.
I guess the way I would think, I love that question.
Yeah.
And the way I would think about it is that while yes, so you could do a placemaking project where people come together to create like essentially what is a selfie station. Maybe it has local references to things, but it's ultimately like made to have people take pictures there. To me, it's still important that they are engaging in a unique space that was created by the community. Even if they're ultimately doing it for a superficial reason, they can only do that here. And it's, to me, it's hopefully helping them to notice what's special about here as they reflect on it. And it might draw more people to that place and see that this thing or that thing is something special about here. Because yes, we didn't always have a selfie kind of culture, but we've also had uh, chain stores that look exactly the same placed all over our country for decades. And we're seeing a little bit of a wave away from that, and people being like, no, I want to go for places that are unique, special, that don't look like everywhere else. So even a selfie station, it's still showcasing what's special about a place and what makes it unlike anywhere else in the world. And I think that's something that to me gives me some hope and makes me feel good about like where we might be going as a society. Even if we're obsessed with our own faces, we're still looking for places that are unique.
Yeah. I wasn't like anti-selfie. I'm
Oh,
not
no.
anti-selfie, but just like the level of engagement that you would have in a place. Like, oh, I'm just going there to get this shot, the cool picture or whatever. That was more of what it was.
Oh,
It's okay
yeah.
to take pictures of yourself.
Oh,
That's
totally.
another human impulse as well. But yeah.
Andrew's had his hand up for a
Can I
while.
just add something about the, I just remembered years ago when they had the installation in, because I lived in New York, in Central Park. Wasn't there another place, and it may have been in Europe, where they had an installation of uh, beach umbrellas?
Yeah, Christo and his wife did installations everywhere since she's died. I don't know if he's dead too, but that all stopped. But they were all over the world. And again, some of them were very controversial, but most of them people appreciated on a profound effect. They didn't even think of taking their photographs. They were just thinking of the deeper meaning. But yeah, they had many, many installations.
I remember that, and I was thinking about kind of a cute little thing to do is to have people actually like just like an event. Like I know that in New York, there's a kite day and everybody brought their kites, flying kites. I mean, that's, you've got a whole park there and everybody's got a kite and everybody's got a different kite. Everybody made a different kite. Everybody's looking at my kite. And it was really all so exciting because I know I bought a kite. I went to FAO Shores and got my own kite and I went there. So, but some people made their own kites and it was really an exciting day in a place that everybody usually went to when you just walked around, or you may have gone to a concert, but everybody was doing something together. And this, I was just thinking about these umbrellas, because if you got people to decorate an umbrella, they could also bring it where they're going with their chairs and sit down under their umbrella so you don't have to worry about the sun and listen to music in a park or something. I mean, you probably could make an entire event or a place that people would know that's where we go and let's get our umbrella out or something of that nature. I'm just thinking about stuff that could happen in one small space where people would always feel comfortable because they've already invested in it,
And think about murals. They're so inviting. I mean, think how walls in Honesdale used to be blank. I was in, the name escapes me now, a small town in Chile a couple of years ago. And after industry left, it was kind of a wasteland. And artists came in and established little restaurants and coffee shops and beautiful, beautiful murals everywhere. And everybody wanted to come to see that. And that's maybe about, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. And yeah, I'm sure people were taking selfies, but a lot of people were just there, to enjoy the profundity of it, the beauty of it. Think about how those murals evoked, ideas about the area. So I love murals.
We have all these artists and we have spectacular murals here in Easton now. It's amazing. I mean, really beautiful works, not, really beautiful works or something really It's amazing to see some of them. I don't know how the artists even came up with the ideas, but people have been willing to put the sides of their houses and even the fronts of their houses to be painted. It's kind of fabulous.
It
Anyway,
is. It's
thank you.
incredible.
Wonderful idea.
Andrew, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, thanks. Lisa, thank you very much. It was really compellingly presented. So a comment and a question. My comment would be, really appreciate in your work the efforts you've made to incorporate residents who might have vandalized something in the past. Sometimes it's not always graffiti or borderline art. It can be much worse. And I've often heard it said that those who feel that power has contempt for them have contempt for their environment. And I feel like there's clear evidence in what you're doing of bringing them in rather than pushing them out. So that's the comment. Props for that. My question, I think, is about whether you've got any advice or wisdom or insights around how to bring in, I guess what I've learned are called veto players. So NIMBYs, not in my backyarders, or anybody who might oppose something for the public good because of self-interest, and they have the power to be able to stop it. That I think is a tougher nut to crack. I mean, it took us years to get bike lanes in the city. I'm now in Narrowsburg. Hopefully, we'll get congestion pricing soon. Now in Narrowsburg, I'd like a sidewalk to connect me to Main Street. I've already encountered opposition from people, self-interest. Again, it's not going to be them. Why do we provide an amenity for someone who really shouldn't be here? Anyway, sorry, that's a long, elaborated question. Any insights on how to deal with them? Thanks.
Absolutely, and that's a big reason why it's so important to test things, because if you might not convince that person that even there's always people, right? We all know people who, even against overwhelming evidence to the contrary, will not change their opinion. But public pressure can be helpful in making someone look foolish for continuing to express something that's clearly incorrect, at least locally, is often effective. So if you are able to say with the I think one of your examples was trying to get a sidewalk somewhere, or have congestion pricing somewhere. If there's a way to test that for, say, congestion pricing for a single event that's happening in Narrowsburg, or there's temporary spray paint that you can use on roads. If you can kind of mark, if you can get permission, if it's, I don't know if it's a state road or a locally owned road, but say if it's a locally owned road, if you can get permission to do a temporary test of just having a marked off area on the road where people are encouraged to use as a sidewalk, then it can help to show how much of a need there is for that and what effects that has. And it's a lot easier when you get your foot in the door, it's a lot easier for people to consider it and say, yes, people are scared of permanent solutions, but a lot of people are willing to entertain something that's temporary to see what happens. So that's why I highly recommend that lighter, quicker, cheaper way of tackling things, testing it out, because yes, people will try to tell you, oh no, we don't want to test at all, but usually there are a lot more people who are willing to say, okay, we'll try a test, who might not be willing to wholesale try the full-blown idea without knowing how it's going to work out.
Well, thank you, everyone, for all the good comments. Thank you, Lisa, for such a cogent, inspiring presentation. So just in finishing up, I have a quote from Dorothy Day. And she writes, "People say, what is the sense of our small effort? They cannot see that we must lay one brick at a time, take one step at a time. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples that spread in all directions. Each one of our thoughts, words, and deeds is like that." No one has the right to sit down and feel hopeless. There's too much work to do. Dorothy Day. Our closing song is another chant. The words are, I'm renewed with the circling of the earth. I'm renewed with the warmth of the sun. I'm renewed with the breath of the wind in the trees. I'm renewed and refreshed by love. I'm renewed with the circling of the earth. I'm renewed by the warmth of the sun. I'm renewed with the breath of the wind in the trees. I'm renewed and refreshed by love. I'm renewed with the circling of the earth. I'm renewed by the warmth of the sun. I'm renewed by the breath of the wind in the trees. I'm renewed and refreshed by love. One more time. I'm renewed with the circling of the earth. I'm renewed with the warmth of the sun. I'm renewed with the breath of the wind in the trees. I'm renewed and refreshed by love. I'm renewed and refreshed by love. So as our final ritual, we're going to extinguish our chalice. So we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we hold and carry in our hearts and make manifest in our days until we are together again. I hope everyone has a lovely, lovely Thanksgiving, and you can think about what words you'll want to share next week in terms of expressing our gratitude.
Lori, prayers and good wishes for the health of your dad, and please a safe trip returning to us.
Yes. Yes. Okay, live long and prosper.
First, I can get on, now I don't know how to get off.
Lisa, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you.